So this is Kylie Champagne. I am an education consultant two over here at LDOE's Division of Nutrition Support for the school food service team. Today, this training will discuss part one of the verification process. So what is verification? Verification is the process of confirming applications submitted for participation in the NSLP under the income eligibility guidelines. Regulations of the National School Lunch Act and regulations of the National School Lunch Program establish requirements for LEAs to verify eligibility of children in a sample of household applications that are approved for free and reduced price meal benefits for that school year. Verification is only required when eligibility is determined through the application process and is not required for eligibility determinations made through direct certification process, so not your DC matches. Verification must include either a confirmation of the family's income eligibility or confirmation that the child is otherwise categorically eligible to participate. Verification may also include a confirmation of any other information required on the application, such as the household size. Another thing to note is that not all applications are going to be required to be verified. It is only a percentage of the applications, and we'll discuss that later in some later slides. So which SFAs are required to complete the process? Not everyone has to complete the full verification process to verify applications because not all SFAs receive applications. The verification process is required for any participating SFA that uses free and reduced price applications. So this includes your traditional SFAs, partial CEP districts, and RCCIs that have day students. And we currently only have one RCCI with day students. Partial CEP districts will only have to complete the entire verification process for those schools who are not CEP. And a note, the district-wide CEPs and RCCIs without day students won't complete steps 1 through 4 of the verification process, but do have to complete that final step to submit the verification summary report, the FNS 742, which is due in January. So here's a full overview of all the steps of verification. So the SFAs who accept free and reduced price meal applications are going to start this process in October. At or near the beginning of the school year, SFAs will collect student eligibility either through direct certification matches or through household applications. Starting October 1st, you want to count all of the applications, those certified at face value, that did not match on direct certification. Applications that were submitted and found through direct certification don't have to conduct verification. Use this total to calculate how many applications you'll need to verify. And then you have until November 15th to verify these applications. November 15th through January 10th is the timeline to report those results in the verification summary form on our CNP website. All SFAs, regardless of their type, are required to submit that report because it includes additional information we have to send to USDA annually. Next, let's discuss the collection officials that are reported for all SFAs. And these collection officials were identified in that section of the NSLP application that you should have just submitted and hopefully has been approved. We're still working on a few of them. So there are 4 types of collection officials: determining, pre-verifying, which is also known as the confirming, verifying, and the hearing official. These collection officials were identified as part of that application you submitted. And this slide shows a brief overview of each official's responsibility, and we'll discuss more in the next couple slides. The determining official is the one who determines the eligibility status of all free and reduced applications using the information provided on the applications. It is required that they sign all the applications as they process them and document the steps. The determining official cannot be the pre-verifying or confirming official who will conduct the second level review. And the determining official is responsible for the for school use only section of the application. Larger SFAs may have multiple people designated as the determining official, Many schools will allow the manager for each school to be the determining official for all the applications that come into that school where they work. The determining official or officials determine free or reduced status by checking to make sure the application is complete, all the sections are filled out, following up on any applications with missing information, calculating and or evaluating the application for eligibility, and assigning and recording the free or reduced status on each application or batch sheet. The determining official must sign each application or batch sheet after the eligibility determination is made. Next, we'll discuss the pre-verifying official. So this confirming official will only verify applications that are selected for verification. They don't need to confirm the eligibility status of all the applications like the determining official does. When applications are pulled for verification, the pre-verifying official will first check the application to confirm that the status was appropriately determined. This person cannot be the same as the determining official. However, the pre-verifying official can be reported as a software program that has the ability to check and approve applications. Collection officials are recorded annually in the CMP application. Next collection official is the verifying official. This person is responsible for the overall verification process from the time of October 1st to November 15th. This person is responsible for the selection process, notifying the households of selection, following up with the households, reviewing all documentation submitted by the households back to the district, and notifying households of the results of the verification. Please note that the verifying official can be the determining official or the pre-verifying official. Only the determining and pre-verifying officials can't be the same person. As a reminder, all applications or batch of applications require a signature from that determining official. However, only applications selected for verification require a signature for the confirming official and the verifying official. Okay, the final official is the hearing official, who is responsible for reviewing a household's challenge if there is a challenge of the status determination. This person should be otherwise independent of any activities involved in the application approval and verification process. We often see a superintendent or business manager or child welfare advocate listed in this role. There are several steps to verification. SFAs who collect and review applications will complete all of them. And again, those CEP district-wide or RCCIs without day students only have to complete the verification summary report. So if you're doing the whole process, collecting and verifying applications, first you'll select the sample pool as of the number of applications on file on October 1st. Next, you'll establish your sample size, and the sample size is going to be based on the October 1st sample pool. Third, your pre-verifying official will conduct a confirmation review of all the applications selected for verification. Then you'll begin verifying the selected applications in writing. And lastly, you'll submit your results on that verification summary form, which typically opens mid-November and is due on or before January 10th every year. So we can discuss some of these steps in more detail. The sample pool is going to depend on the total number of approved applications on file as of October 1st of the current school year, including any paper or electronic applications, however you provide them to your families. The sample pool is not based on the number of children eligible for free and reduced price meals, however, as some of the eligible students will have estimated eligibility through the direct certification process and won't have an application on file. In addition, the sample pool does not include applications where all children in the household are determined eligible based on any documentation provided by the state or local agency, like SNAP, FDPIR, TANF, or Medicaid, or any applications where all children in the household are determined to be foster, homeless, migrant, or runaway. Those households with a free or reduced price approved application on file as of October 1st are subject to verification, and that's going to include your income applications, free or reduced, SNAP applications, and foster applications. In some cases, students are determined free based on agency documents. not free or reduced application, and therefore do not have to be subject to verification. Children who have been certified under direct cert and their siblings in the household at any point in the current school year, children in RCCIs, except those that are day students, foster children that are directly certified if documentation was provided from DCFS to the school or central office, children deemed homeless, migrant, or runaway by any official, children enrolled in Head Start or Even Start programs. If the child is categorically eligible under DC, foster, homeless, migrant, or runaway by agency records and the parent submitted an application, that application is not subject to verification. They'd be categorically eligible, and that supersedes the need for an application. Denied or paid applications are also not subject to verification. Okay, so once you have your sample pool, you're going to determine your sample size. The LEA must calculate the sample size, or that number of applications that need to be verified. When calculating the sample size, you're always going to round up to the nearest whole number. It's very important that you verify the number that you need and not any less. At least one application must always be verified. With the exception of verification for cause, LEAs must not verify more or less than the standard sample size or the alternate sample size when the alternate is used. So this is the standard method. It's going to be most commonly used by LEAs unless the LEA qualifies to use an alternate sample size, and we'll talk about that in a couple slides. The standard size is equal to the lesser of either 3% of the applications approved by the LEA for the school year as of October 1st, selected from error-prone, or 3,000 error-prone applications approved by the LEA for the school year as of October 1st. I do want to note here, if you're using and relying on computer software, ensure to hand count as well and check that the total is correct. We've had a lot in the past where there was a lower number of applications verified because their software didn't complete the calculation correctly. And I've also seen SFAs verify way more than was required. So make sure that you are verifying 3%. And the definition of error-prone applications is those applications with an income listed with $100 a month, $1,200 a year above or below the free eligibility limit, or $100 a month, $1,200 a year below the reduced price eligibility limit. The determining official should flag these error-prone applications during the approval process. In the cases where there aren't enough error-prone applications to choose from, the SFA must randomly select any additional to fulfill that 3% requirement. So let's look at an example of the standard method. If an LEA received 210 approved applications on file as of October 1st, how many applications do they need to verify, by what date, and what type do they need to select? If they receive 210 applications, we're going to multiply by 0.033%, and that calculates to be 6.3. Regardless of that decimal, you always want to round up. So this SFA would need to verify 7 applications, and they would need to have that completed by November 15th. These 7 applications must be selected from error-prone applications. If you only have 6 error-prone applications, the 7th is randomly selected. If you have 8 error-prone applications, you just randomly select to verify 7 of those. If you don't do the standard method, some SFAs are allowed to do an alternate method. Those SFAs that had less than a 20% non-response rate from last school year. The alternate one sample size is the lesser of 3% of the applications approved by the LEA for the school year as of October 1st, selected at random, or 3,000 applications by the LEA for the school year, selected at random. With the random method, error-prone applications are not identified for verification like in the basic or standard method. If we want to look at an example of alternate one, there was an SFA that received 75 approved applications as of October 1st. How many applications will you need to pull for verification? By what date and what type? You would need to look at 3 applications in total. 75 times 0.03 is 2.25, rounded up to 3 applications. Another alternate method is the focus method, and any SFAs with last year a less than 20% non-response rate would be able to use this. Using this method, your sample size will equal the lesser of the sum of either 1,000 applications approved as of October 1st or 1% of all applications approved as of October 1st of the school year selected from error-prone applications, plus the lesser of 500 applications approved by the LEA, or 0.5% of applications approved that had case numbers in lieu of income information. And as an example for this method, the focused method, you have 245 apps on file as of October 1st, with 60 being SNAP apps. How many error-prone do you need to verify? How many SNAP applications do you need to verify? And by what date? We will complete this example in 2 steps. So first you need to calculate how many error-prone applications by multiplying our total number by 1%. 245 multiplied by 0.01 is 2.45, rounded up to 3 applications. And these 3 applications will be pulled from error-prone. Next, you want to look at the number of SNAP applications. Multiply the number of SNAP applications on file by 3%. Remember that these applications have SNAP numbers that were not found on the Direct Cert SNAP list. So in this case, we have 60 SNAP applications multiplied by 1%, which is equal to 0.3 rounded up to 1. So in this example, the SFA will need to verify a total of 4 applications, 3 selected at random from error-prone and 1 selected at random from SNAP. So there are those different methods. Which one are you approved to use? We just sent out a memo, or it was posted to the website today, to list all the SFAs and which method they are approved for. Systems use their previous year's non-response rates to determine the method they're eligible for. If you had a less than 20% non-response rate last year, you can use any method, but if your non-response rate was greater than 20%, you have to use the basic or standard method, selecting 3% from error-prone. And the memo is linked on this slide with that list. How did we calculate that? What is a non-response rate? So any SFA with a non-response rate for the preceding school year of less than 20% qualifies for the random or focus method. The non-response rate is the percentage of approved household applications with no response to the request for verification information. So as an example, if last year you selected 7 applications for verification and you received responses from 3, what would be your non-response rate, and which method or methods are you eligible to use for this year? If you divide the number of non-responders by the number of total applications selected for verification and then multiply by 100, that'll give you your non-response rate percentage. So in this example, we had 4 non-responders out of 7 total applications. 4 divided by 7 times 100 is 57.14. So in this case, this SFA received greater than 20%, would need to use the standard or basic method. Apart from the required verification of a specified number of approved applications, regulations require LEAs to verify any questionable applications, including on a case-by-case basis, verifying any applications for cause when the LEA is aware of any additional income or persons in the household. This is what we call verification for cause. Determining officials are strongly encouraged to contact the household to clarify any information that's unclear or questionable before certifying the application and proceeding with verification for cause. Once households have been requested to provide information for cause, the LEA must complete that verification process for the households. Verification for cause cannot delay the approval of applications, though, and LEAs can begin the verification process only after determination of eligibility has made. If an application is complete and indicated the child's eligible for free and reduced price benefits, the application must be approved while the LEA begins the verification for cause. When conducting verification for cause, the LEA verified applications for cause following the standard verification procedures described in this presentation. After completing the confirmation reviews, the LEA may, on a case-by-case basis, replace up to 5% of applications selected. Applications can be replaced when the LEA believes the household would not be able to satisfactorily respond to verification. If 5% of total applications in the district result in less than one application total, one application can still be replaced. All results of the 5% calculation are rounded up to the whole number. Any application must be replaced with another approved application selected on the same basis. For example, an error-prone application must be substituted for a withdrawn error-prone application. The newly selected application must then have a confirmation review. As a note, when an application is selected for verification and prior to hearing back from the household in question, that household is found on a direct certification list. The application does not have to be replaced. The application would be marked as direct certification in the appropriate box in the FNS 742 report, and the application should be included in field 5-5 of that report and indicate the number of applications that are being converted to direct certification in the remarks. So I want to repeat that because we do have that happen often. When an application is selected for verification and then they're found on the direct cert list, you don't have to replace that application. That is then verified through direct cert, and verification would be complete for that application. Prior to any other verification activity, each approved application selected for verification must be reviewed to ensure the initial determination was correct. Any LEA that conducts a confirmation review of all applications at the time of certification is not required to conduct confirmation reviews prior to verification. The confirmation review must be done by an individual other than the individual who made the initial determination. This requirement is waived if the LEA uses some kind of technology or software system with a high level of accuracy to process the initial determination. The LEA must receive approval through their online application where they submit that their software is the confirming official. If the state agency determines that the technology-based system is not adequate, it may require the LEA to conduct a confirmation review of each application selected. And after the confirmation has been completed, they would need to sign the application or sign a cover letter to attach to the reviewed application. And this is all done prior to contacting the households. This is an overview of the LEA's responsibility following a status change as the result of a confirmation review. We'll discuss procedures if there is no change in status, if there's a change from reduced to free, a change from free to reduced, or if there's a status change from free or reduced to paid. So if the initial determination of the application is correct, the SFA can proceed with verification. If the initial determination of the application is incorrect and the status is changed from reduced to free, the district must correct the household's eligibility status, notify the household of the change, and proceed with verification. If the initial determination is incorrect and the status is changed from free to reduced, the district must not correct the household's eligibility status and proceed with verification of the application. If the initial determination is incorrect and the status is changed to paid, the SFA must immediately send the household a notice of adverse action, not verify the application, and select a similar application for confirmation and verification, and follow the confirmation review procedures for the newly selected application. Once selection procedures are complete, the LEA can proceed with notifying the households. Requirements for household notification of selection for verification are included in regulations. When a household is selected for verification, the LEA must inform the household in writing of its selection and must provide a list of the documents or other forms of evidence the household has to submit to the LEA as proof. When the LEA uses agency records or direct verification to confirm eligibility, a letter or email informing the household of its selection for verification is not required, as verification would be complete. SFAs are encouraged to use the prototype verification forms we have on the CMP website to ensure that all areas required are included in the notification. The household notification letter needs to include an indication that the household was selected for verification, a modified use of information statement, which can be found on our prototype form, the full non-discrimination statement, if a child is receiving benefits based on income, a list of the types of acceptable information that may be provided to confirm the current income, like pay stubs, award letters from assistance agencies for benefits like Social Security or SSI, or support payments from decrees of court. If a child is receiving benefits based on categorically eligibility, an indication of the household may provide proof that a child or any household member is receiving benefits under an assistance program, that a child is other source categorically eligible, instead of providing income information. It also needs to include a warning that information must be provided by a date specified by the LEA, and that any failure to do so would result in termination of benefits. A notice that documentation of income or receipt of assistance may be provided from any point in time between the month prior to the application and the time the household is required to provide the income documentation. It should also include the name of the determining official who can answer any questions or provide assistance if needed, and a telephone number the household can call at no cost for assistance to the family. So what is direct verification? Regulations permit LEAs to directly verify approved applications selected for verification. Direct verification involves using public records from public agencies to verify household income or household participation in an eligible program, helping relieve families of any additional paperwork and reducing the gap in meal benefits. Direct verification may be completed at the state or local level or through a joint effort at both levels. LEAs are required to conduct direct verification, but are not required to conduct direct verification. And direct verification must be conducted prior to contacting the households for any documentation. What if a household is selected for verification and then they're later found on the October DC run with appropriate matches? So in the past, the state required SFAs to replace applications that were part of the original verification sample, but this practice is no longer required. SFAs can consider these apps as being directly verified and proceed with verifying the remaining apps in the same sample following the usual process. The apps that are directly verified will still be logged in the verification summary form, and just be reminded that when households are found on the DC list, SFA should always notify the household if they'll be receiving a better status and notify them in writing. SFAs with electronic systems should always update the database as well to show that the children listed on the now DC eligible application are DC free and not SNAP or income-based free. The National School Lunch Act requires LEAs to conduct verification follow-up activities. To continue the verification process after household notification, the district must either determine if the household has submitted adequate information to complete its individual verification, or if a follow-up with the household is needed. The LEA must make at least one attempt to contact the household when the household does not adequately respond for the request for verification. Non-responders are going to include no response or incomplete or ambiguous responses that don't permit the LEA to resolve the children's eligibility for either free or reduced price meals. The required follow-up attempt may be in writing by mail or email, or by telephone or text message. But the LEA must document that conduct was attempted. Additionally, the LEA must ensure limited English proficiency households are provided adequate language assistance and understand the need to respond to the verification request. So when following up with households, it's the responsibility of the LEA to inform the households that failure to provide adequate written evidence or failure to designate an adequate collateral contact will result in the termination of benefits. Attempt to obtain the missing written evidence or collateral contact information, and they need to contact the household to complete the verification process if the collateral contact is unwilling or unable to provide the requested information. A collateral contact is a person outside of the household who is knowledgeable about the household circumstances and can confirm a household's income level or participation in an assistance program or other source categorical eligibility program. That can include employers, social service agents, migrant workers, and religious or civic organizations. The verifying official should request a collateral contact only in cases when the household has not been able to provide adequate written evidence. These are some examples of acceptable written evidence. You want income eligibility that contains the name of the household member, amount of income received, the frequency it's received, and the date the income was received. For example, a pay stub that didn't have any dates on it would not be sufficient. Categorical eligibility from an assistance program that contains an official letter or notice indicating that the child or any household member is receiving benefits from that program, such as a notice of eligibility. A document from an assistance program that doesn't specify the certification period does not meet the documentation for verification. For example, if the identification cards for SNAP and TANF are insufficient because they usually don't have an expiration date. Or categorical eligibility from another source that contains an official letter, notice, or a list from the appropriate state agency, social service agency, program office, coordinator, or court. So while you're conducting verification, how do you know when it is complete? Verification is considered complete when the household submits adequate written evidence that results in no change in status. At that point, verification would be considered complete for that household. If the household submits adequate written evidence which indicates that the children should receive either a greater or lesser level of benefits, verification is considered complete for this household when the notice of adverse action is sent or when the household is notified that the benefits will be increased or decreased. The household indicates verbally or in writing that it no longer wishes to receive free or reduced meals. Verification is considered complete when the notice of adverse action is sent. The application provided case numbers, and it is determined that no household member is receiving benefits from an assistance program. Verification is considered complete when the notice of adverse action is sent. The household does not respond or fails to provide adequate documentation after the required follow-up, or the household refuses to cooperate with verification with the LEA. Verification would be considered complete when the notice of adverse action is sent. So this is a one-pager to kind of discuss the timeline of verification. If verification results in either decreased or terminated benefits, the household must be given 10 calendar days written advance notice of the change. The first day of the 10 calendar day advance notice is the day the notice is sent. If the household does not request a hearing during that 10 calendar days, the reduction or termination of benefits must take place no longer than 10 operating days after the 10 calendar day advance notice. However, if the household requests a hearing during the 10 calendar days, The SFA must continue to provide benefits for which the child was originally approved until a hearing is held and the final determination is made. So from here, if the hearing official rules that benefits must be reduced, that must take place within 10 operating days after the decision. Or if the hearing official rules that benefits must be increased, that must take place within 3 operating days of the decision. If you ever have a question about verification, please contact me, or at the end of this presentation is the main number to our office, and your question can be directed to whoever's available. When a notice of adverse action is issued, the notice shall advise the household of the change, the reasons for the change, notification of the right to appeal, and when the appeal must be filed to ensure that continued benefits while awaiting a hearing and decision, instructions on how to appeal, and the right to reapply at any time during the school year. If a family's benefits are reduced as a result of verification because they failed to respond or didn't submit sufficient information to substantiate their income, and during the school year the family reapplies, the SFA must verify the new application prior to the family being approved for benefits. If the family refuses to provide the required information, free or reduced price benefits must be denied. So once verification is complete and you've received responses, the final step of the verification process is to complete that verification summary report known as the FNS 742 on the CMP website. This final step is going to be discussed. We have another training probably in mid-November. The report will become available at that time in mid-November and is due January 10th every year. That date never changes. Please note that all SFAs participating in the National School Lunch Program, whether you're district-wide CEP or RCCI, do have to complete the report in the system. So let's look at some frequently asked questions. Is the LEA required to provide a no-cost telephone option? Yes, the LEA is not required to necessarily have a toll-free number, but parents and guardians must be able to call collect. That helps to ensure the parents and guardians can contact during operating hours if they work outside the local calling area. And the telephone number needs to be on the letter to households. What if the LEA is using another agency record to verify applications and the agency doesn't respond before the deadline? The LEA should document its attempt to contact that appropriate agency in advance of the deadline. That would demonstrate good faith, and then it would be a valid reason for the state agency to extend the deadline to require the amount of time to complete it. If a household voluntarily provides pay stubs that conflict with the income information on the household application, according to the application, the household is eligible for free meals, but according to the pay stubs, it looks like the household's not eligible. What should the determining official do? So under these circumstances, the LEA official must take appropriate action by either sending the household a notice of approval and a notice of adverse action at the same time, giving the household an opportunity to resolve the discrepancy through notice of adverse action, sending the household a notice of approval and a verification letter based on verification for cause at the same time. LEA officials are in the best position to determine which action is appropriate, so regardless of the action taken, the inconsistency must be resolved in an appropriate amount of time. How is overtime income counted for the purpose of verification? The LEA official should work with the household to determine whether overtime during the verification month is representative of overtime worked throughout the year. If the overtime is a rare or sporadic source of income, the household's income should be calculated on the regular monthly income without the overtime. If a household is paid weekly and submits a pay stub for a week, does the LEA need to request stubs for the whole month? If the weekly pay stub is representative of the regular income, one pay stub is sufficient. And lastly, what if an application is selected for verification, but the household transfers out of the school district before the information can be verified? If that happens, verification could not be completed. So to meet the minimum verification requirement, a new application would be selected. All right. I know it was a lot of information, and there probably were some other weird situations that happened last year. That y'all can let me know what happens throughout the year if you have any questions. But does anybody have any questions right now? We have a question in the chat. Are applications indicating zero income subject to verification? Yes, they can be, and that was briefly discussed in the slide regarding verification for cause. If you have a reason to investigate further, they are you could verify them for cause, or they would need to be completed if they're selected in that 3%. Any other questions, or if you need more information on that, you can certainly send me an email or give me a call. All right, I can stay on for just a couple more minutes if anybody does come up with a question, a certain situation that pertains to your district. Otherwise, thank you so much for participating today. Have a great week.